Chris.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Any disclosure of interest? We have a new face at the table today. Lisa Anderson is going to be sitting in as Zavonko has been extended. So Lisa, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. I'm learning how to use the talk function here. So I just arrived here in Norfolk on Monday. So Joe's been very gracious to take over the seat and give most of the report today. I normally sit in as the West Region Traffic Manager. So I manage traffic and marine for the West Region of the OPP. My history with the OPP, I've spent pretty much as a constable, split time between general law enforcement detachments such as Norfolk and traffic. I spent 5 years with our emergency response team, provincial emergency response team as a constable. I was a detective. I worked in organized crime enforcement bureau through provincial auto theft teams, asset forfeiture units. I was promoted back on the road, where I spent a significant period of time as a frontline supervisor in detachment in the Toronto area, and moved into various detective positions as a sergeant as well. So I was a coordinator of investigations for wiretap investigations through headquarters. I was also a detective sergeant within our Professional Standards Bureau, so conducted investigations, public internal complaints against our officers, as well as officers throughout the province of Ontario. I was promoted within Professional Standards Bureau as a sergeant major, and then I became a coordinator of investigations for an area of the OPP. Mostly the Toronto area, and then also deployed units throughout the province. Approximately 2 years ago, I came to West as an inspector and have been taking over the commodity of traffic and marine within West. So I have 24 years with the OPP and wake up every day and really enjoy coming into work. So I'm really looking forward to coming to Norfolk, getting back to detachment. It's been a little bit since I've been at detachment, so I love field and returning, so I really appreciate the opportunity here as well.
Well, great. Well, welcome to Norfolk.
Thank you.
Minutes of November 22nd. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, if I could have a motion to adopt. Moved by Charlie, seconded by Jim. All in favor? Thank you. There was some business arising. There were some questions about mental health calls. We did get some detail on that last time with respect to the benefits of what we were being billed relative to the time that was being spent. But there were other questions about it, and I was hoping that you could provide us more information. Joe?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I believe the question posed at the last meeting was regarding how the average time per call is calculated. The average time is based on the initial call plus any assist plus any follow-up. So it's an aggregate of all. Currently, we're at 4.5 hours for 2017, which is greater than the provincial weighted average, which is used for billing.
And does it include the mental health crisis workers' time?
No,
Totally.
it's strictly officer time.
Are there other questions on that? Okay, thanks, Joe. There were a couple of other things. One, we're still looking for someone to go to the conference. I don't know whether anybody's expressed interest or been able to work that into their time frame. And the third thing was there was going to be some follow-up on sex assaults because they were up 30% this year. Anything that you can tell us on that?
I have nothing to report on that at this time. As Inspector Nash alluded to at the last meeting, we'd have to look at each and every one to find out the reason.
There's nothing common.
So there's nothing common in all of them. I think it's a lot like domestics. The reporting now, there's more services out there to assist, so people are coming forward more to report them. They're not going unreported. So I think that's also driving up our numbers, which is good because we want people to report them.
Okay, thank you. Any other business arising that I didn't see?
Mr. Chair, if we could go back to the conference.
Sure.
I have expressed an interest in going to the conference, if that's...
Sounds good to
Okay.
us. Wonderful. So if you can book that in. Thank you, Carol.
Mr. Chair, I have just two items I wanted to follow up on. At the last meeting, you inquired about the municipal ride grant, and I didn't have a firm answer on the number. So we did get a municipal ride grant of $15,653, all of which is going to be spent on during this festive season. on
If
paving.
memory serves me correctly, that's less than we've gotten before.
Slightly. Last 2016, I believe it was around 15,000 as well. And the other thing that I wanted to follow up on, and then this is regarding speeding on Nelson Street in Port Dover. So in the last month, we deployed the portable speed watch sign on loan from Brant County onto Nelson Street twice for 3 or 4 days at a time. And we had positive feedback from the community in that area. As well, on December the 7th, we submitted a proceeds of crime grant application for the consideration of purchasing 4 of the portable speed watch signs. This is similar to the grant application that we applied for back in the spring. So we resubmitted it, and with letters of support from the mayor, again, Norfolk Fire EMS, as well as Norfolk Engineering. So hopefully we'll be successful this time around.
Okay, I mean, we're jumping ahead a bit, but was there any solution on municipal signage for Nelson Street?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I finally did get my act together and did my follow-up on that like I was going to. And actually, what Staff Sergeant Joe has just told us is very good news. I think at first the roads department responded that they weren't aware that we had been turned down on that previous grant application that I think our board heard of a couple of months ago. Lee Robinson indicated to me she would still pursue either purchasing our own portable radar signs or installing larger speed signs, or installing one of those drive like your children live here signs, sort of a general information signs. None of that has been acted on yet in terms of purchasing new signage, et cetera. So my suggestion, I think, from the board perspective here is that we wait and see the results of our application. If we are successful, obviously we'll have some infrastructure to move around to some of these problem areas rather than installing larger permanent signage at this point. That would be my suggestion. I did follow up. They're prepared to do it if the board and ultimately council feel we have to do new larger signs permanently installed. But I'd like to really wait and see what comes of this most recent application first.
Okay, well, so I guess we'll just leave it until we hear about the grant application, and we won't carry it forward as a business arising item for next month, other than any speed spy data that you get.
Yes, I still have the speed watch sign from Brant County, OPP. They're not aware that it's in our possession right now, so we'll continue to deploy it as we see fit until they ask for it back.
Jim?
It's almost like an early Christmas Mr. Chair, thanks. I wasn't aware, I guess I should have been, but I wasn't, that this must be a provincial proceeds of crime fund. I know we have our own small fund here within this detachment, but I mean, those things, if you applied for 4, that must have been like $8,000 or $10,000 or so, I suspect, or more perhaps. But is there a provincial fund that we applied to?
This is the provincial fund, and the total was slightly over $25,000 for the 4 signs.
Great.
Mr. Chair, still, if you don't mind, while I'm on a roll here. So is that a fund that boards can apply to from time to time on almost anything relating to our mandate?
It comes out twice a year, and there's usually a direction regarding applications. So this one was, the application had to involve external partners, county, EMS, fire, community, sort of a community mobilization process.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thanks for doing that, by the way.
Yeah. Any other business arising? Seeing none, if we could move on to correspondence. Any questions or comments on community policing? Any further comments on the speed signage on Nelson Street? Or I think we've beaten it to death, but if there's anything else. And any questions or comments on our letter to Marie-France Lalonde about some of the sections of Bill 175 that we were seeking clarification on. That letter also went to Municipal Policing Bureau and the OAPSB. So whether it has any effect or not, I don't know, but there were certainly lots of agreement from municipal policing on what we were writing, and basically they didn't disagree with anything, so they were seeking clarity on it too. So I guess we'll just wait and see what happens. Could I have a motion to adopt correspondence 5A to 5C as information? Moved by Carol, seconded by Jim. All in favor? OPP report. Oh, Joe, okay. Wasn't sure who was doing it.
Yes, I'll give the report today, Mr. Chair. So as of November 30th, 2017, we submitted the report on the 13th. On the 14th, our computer program came up working again. So I can report on the 2017 overtime allotment. We now have the numbers for November, November. So the 2017 overtime allotment per the contract is $359,847. And the overtime dollars spent to date is $318,801.14. This equates to 88.59% of our allotment. So that number will be missing from your packets. That came in after they were printed. As well, locally dedicated hours of overtime in November will be 560.25 hours, which is slightly lower than our November 2016 number, and that will be on page 28.
And the big jump in October was because of Friday the 13th.
Correct.
Okay.
Moving on, auxiliary policing hours for the month of November amounted to 417 hours. Crime Stoppers report. There have been 567 tips received so far this year. Student Crime Stoppers, Coordinator Amy Bernardo and Chair Neil Unwin attended high schools in Norfolk County and met with the vice principals to discuss the Crime Stoppers programs in the schools. Neil also attended the Hagersville Secondary School commencement, where a bursary was presented to recipient Zoe Whitman. Promotions, meetings, presentations. Crime Stoppers participated, presented to and met with and gave promotional items to the Caledonia Food Bank, Port Dover Christmas Parade, Caledonia Christmas Parade, Selkirk Christmas Parade, and Special Olympics. Moving down to fundraising, just want to let everyone be aware that they're currently selling tickets at $20 each for a fundraising dinner at Boston Pizza here in Simcoe to be held on January 18th. It's Crime Stoppers Awareness Month, and anyone wishing tickets, feel free to contact the office and Amy at extension 7452. Nationally and internationally, national initiatives will be carried out in the coming months with local Crime Stoppers programs participating to inform the public of issues of human trafficking and contraband tobacco. Canadian Crime Stoppers Association National Conference, the inaugural conference is to be held in conjunction with the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers Training Conference, which is hosted by Hamilton Crime Stoppers May 31st to June 3rd of 2018. Moving to page 29, the calls for service billing summary report. So for November, we have a total of 988 calls for service, which is slightly down from November of 2016. Year to date, we're at 13,357 calls, which is slightly up from year to date on 2016. And weighted hours, year to date, 53,970, which is down from the weighted hours in 2016, which were 54,454. If we move to page 34, I'll give the statistics report. All violent crime during the month of November, it was projected that Norfolk OPP could expect between 32 and 42 events. During the reported month, 29 actual events were investigated. All violent crime continues to fall within projected limits. Assaults. Based on a 5-year trend, it was estimated that the Norfolk OPP could expect 22 events during the month of November. During the reported month, 20 actual events of assault were investigated. Simcoe continues to report the highest number of assaults. Domestic assaults. Based on a 5-year trend, it was estimated that the Norfolk OPP could expect between 39 and 46 events during the month of November. During the reported month, 47 actual events were investigated. Domestics in Norfolk reported slightly above the projected range for November, and we continue to work with our community partners through the situation table, victim services, and the courts to address incidents of domestic violence. All property crime during the month of November, based on a 5-year trend, it was estimated that we could expect between 117 and 130 events. During the reported month, 128 events were investigated. Break-and-enters, based on the 5-year trend, it was estimated that the Norfolk OPP could expect 18 events. During the month of November, 16 actual events were investigated. Frauds, based on a 5-year trend, it was estimated that the Norfolk OPP could expect between 9 and 19 events being reported. During the reported month, 15 actual events were investigated. Frauds in Norfolk County reported within the projected range for November. Mischiefs, based on a 5-year trend, it was estimated that the Norfolk OPP could expect 30 events during the month of November. During the reported month, 29 actual events were investigated. Theft from motor vehicle. Based on a 5-year trend analysis, it was estimated that the Norfolk OPP could expect between 10 and 24 events. During the month of November, 18 actual events were investigated. Simcoe continues to lead the county in thefts from motor vehicles, and as we've discussed at previous meetings, and especially at this time of the year, we can't stress enough to people, lock it or lose it. Theft of motor vehicles. Based on a 5-year trend, it was estimated that Norfolk OPP could expect 9 events. During the reported month, 9 actual events were investigated. Moving to theft under 5,000. Based on a 5-year trend analysis, it was estimated that Norfolk OPP could expect between 41 and 61 events being reported in November. During the reported month, 57 actual events were reported. Illicit drugs. Based on a 5-year trend analysis, it was estimated that the Norfolk OPP could expect 4 events. During the month of November, 4 actual events were investigated. Regarding illicit drug investigations, the Norfolk/Haldeman Street Crime Unit laid 13 Controlled Drugs and Substances Act charges and 32 Criminal Code charges. They seized approximately $13,000 worth of drugs and $4,000 cash. As well, at this time, I'd just like to mention that we had our first confirmed analysis for the drug carfentanil here in Norfolk County. It was a seizure that occurred back on October the 6th, and the drug was sent away to Health Canada, and it came back positive for carfentanil. So that is now in our county.
Any questions on that? I have one. It says that the sample went in October 6, 2007. We got the results December 15, 2017. Do all samples go to Health Canada, and is that typically how long it takes to get a breakdown of what is in it?
All drug samples go to Health Canada for analysis, and it can take several weeks or months.
And so 2 months would be an outlier, or 2 months would be
2
typical?
months would probably be average. A lot of it is based on the trial date set for the accused. That goes on the sample submission, and Health Canada, of course, have thousands and thousands of samples to analyze, so they do it on a priority basis.
Okay, and carfentanil, this is the first time it's been found in Norfolk?
This is the first confirmed where we can definitely say that it was, the drugs were analyzed and they came back as carfentanil.
Any questions on that? Okay, go ahead, Joe.
So moving on to traffic collisions. All collision types for November reported within the projected range at 98. All collision types did see an increase of 14, or 16.7% from November last year. A year-to-date increase of 12.5% is observed from the same time frame last year. Property damage collisions for November reported within the projected range at 85. Property damage collisions did see an increase of 17, or 25% from November 2016. A year-to-date increase of 13.4% was observed from the same time frame last year. Non-fatal injury collisions for November reported within the projected range at 13. Non-fatal collisions did see a decrease of 2, or 13.3% from November last year. A year-to-date increase of 9.5% was observed from the same time frame last year. In reviewing the November non-fatal injury collision causal factors, they ranked as follows. 5 were due to inattentive driver, 2 were due to following too close, 2 were due to other reasons, 2 were due to lost control, 1 impaired by alcohol, 1 due to fatigue, and 1 due to an animal. Fatal collisions for November reported within the projected range at 0, so there were no fatal collisions in November. Fatal collisions saw a decrease of 1 from November last year, and the year-to-date increase of 0% was observed from the same time frame last year. And we continue to combat traffic collisions through our monthly zero tolerance, zero collision initiatives, focus patrols, and through media education.
When you say inattentive, are you meaning anything in particular, like is it just inattentive, or are they talking on cell phones, texting?
Could be talking on a cell phone, texting, reaching down to turn the radio station, daydreaming, just not paying attention.
Very reassuring. Go ahead, Joe.
I'm just going to, while we're doing traffic, just flip over to page 48, and I'll cover impaired driving. So based on a 5-year trend, it was estimated that the Norfolk OPP could expect 8 events. During the reported month, 7 actual events were investigated. And then moving back to page 46, 911 hang-up calls. Based on a 5-year trend analysis, it was estimated that we could expect between 133 and 175 events. During the reported month, 109 actual events were reported. Alarm calls. Based on a 5-year trend, we could expect between 55 and 83 events. During the month of November, 61 actual events were reported. Mental health calls, page 49. So based on a 5-year trend, it was estimated that the Norfolk OPP could expect 36 events. During the reported month, 72 actual events were investigated during the month of November. So the 72 events related to officers dedicating 267.25 hours to these investigations. And year-to-date, time spent on mental health calls for service is now at 4.25 hours. So in reviewing the Mental Health Act events for November, which saw a spike, this spike can be directly related to one specific repeat caller who was responsible for 33 of those 72 events. And through the diligent efforts of our MCERT workers, our community mobilization officer, they were able to have this repeat offender admitted into the hospital, where they're currently receiving care and awaiting assessment by a specialized geriatric team. So it's anticipated that our Mental Health Act calls have dropped, and I can say that since the person is receiving medical care, our calls have dropped.
Would it have been the same person in October too?
Yes.
So
It's
is it 33 over 2 months or just 33?
33 for November.
And so it could have been 33 in October too?
I'd have to look back, but I could get that exact number, but it would probably average about that.
Yeah, you know it's just a big number.
Yeah. So, our MCERT workers have done a phenomenal job. It's been a long haul with this repeat offender to get the help that they require. So hopefully this time it's successful.
Jim, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Joe, for giving us that. I guess it's hard to call it good news, but sobering news, I guess. In a situation like that where you say it's been a difficult task, is it because the system is so overcrowded, if you like, already with individuals requiring that kind of extra care? I mean, one would wonder why someone like this, as soon as they're identified as a high-risk mental health care individual, they wouldn't immediately be taken into care and, so on and so forth. So why is it such, as you call it, a tough haul?
When dealing with individuals and the health system, there's various levels of mental health issues, and a lot of the times they fall between the cracks of the different services, and sometimes you have to wait, unfortunately, until they deteriorate to a position where they now qualify for that specific care. Best way I can explain it.
So it's hard to preempt this.
It is. We've tried. It's been an ongoing process over a year. I can say that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I presume our situation table gets involved in, this would be the classic case, I would assume, where the situation table would try and, if you like, coordinate a call for service or a response?
I can definitely say that this individual has come up to the situation table at least 3 times. And everyone's been pushing forward for the appropriate care.
Good, thank you. I mean, at least it's been working the way it's supposed to. It's just frustratingly long and way reactive.
Yes. Okay. If there's no other questions, moving forward to Foot Patrol. So for the month of November, 272 hours and 272 and a quarter hours of foot patrol were conducted throughout various areas of the county, and 41 school visits were conducted, and no bike patrol, I'm sure, due to the weather. Driving charges. So on page 51, we're reporting for October. We're always 2 months behind with the system. So in October, 2 distracted driving charges were laid, 2 racing charges, 153 speeding charges, 18 seat belt, and 12 impaired charges. Driver's license suspensions, now we're back into the month of November. 4 roadside screening devices were issued. 11 administrative driver's licenses suspensions were issued. 3 3-day suspensions. 42 rides were conducted, and 11 seat belts were conducted. Moving on to Focus Patrol results. Currently, we still have our Simcoe Panorama Focus Patrol up and running. We started that day 1 of the Panorama, and it will run until January 1st. I believe we've only had 1 incident so far. Someone targeted the wishing well again this year. Traffic. related focus patrols, we still have the Big Four initiative open for Highway 3, Simcoe to Delhi. And as of October 17th, 38 Norfolk County officers have dedicated 234 and 3/4 hours to this patrol, issuing 68 charges and 14 warnings. And on top of that, after December 31st, we'll be able to report as to our provincial traffic team. They're also targeting that focus patrol. So we'll have those numbers after the 31st. As well, we have the Big Four initiative, Highway 24, Brant County to Simcoe. As of October 17th, 31 Norfolk County officers have dedicated 429 hours to this patrol. A total of 243 charges have been laid and 11 warnings issued. Again, we'll have DHSD contribution after the 31st, the next meeting. Last week, the 11th to the 15th, we participated in Operation Safe Trucking, which was a focus patrol in conjunction with West Region's Operation Safe Trucking Initiative, targeting trucks on our roadways. I don't have the results for that yet. It just closed on Friday. Closed focus patrols, speeding in Delhi on James Street in the 40-kilometer-an-hour zone, ran from the October 30th to November 19th. 7 officers dedicated 15 hours to this patrol, 10 charges were laid and 7 warnings issued. Pine Grove Road in Delhi ran from October 16th to November 20th. 11 officers dedicated 27 hours, 19 charges, and 15 warnings were issued during that time frame. Focus patrol for Town Line Street in St. Williams ran from November 6th to November 19th. 5 officers dedicated 7.5 hours. No charges were laid, 1 warning issued, but visibility was quite high and the residents appreciated that. Speed spy study, we conducted one on Victoria Road in Charlottesville. No problem was found with speeding there. November, we conducted a zero tolerance, zero collision initiative. This was on Highway 19 between Michaels Lane and the BAM Norfolk Boundary Road. This was in conjunction with a campaign focus patrol with Elgin County, OPP, as Highway 19 travels through both counties, and they were receiving the same speeding complaints in their area. So 11 hours of patrol and enforcement were dedicated by the Norfolk County officers, resulting in 5 speeding charges. We didn't have a lot of speeding charges, but our visibility was high, and we had quite a few of the residents coming out saying they were appreciative of us being in the area, and I think our presence there did have an impact on speeding, and later in the spring we'll do another speed spy study there to see if it's still a problem or not. And barring any questions, that's the report.
Any questions on the inspector's report? Charlie?
Thank you, Chair. I'm stopped on the opposite because I'm speeding, which I don't. Did you put your hand up too?
No.
My question is, if the officer comes back and says, "Slow down, this is the one," is that just curious?
All that information will be recorded in their notebook, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, they've got your picture on file. So. Jim, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to come back to one of the, as we call them, the Big Four, I guess, Highway 24 between Brant and Simcoe. It always amazes me at the statistics. I think, Joe, you mentioned 243 charges on that section of road. Within what time period is that? Is that year to date or just within this focus patrol period?
So the focus patrol period started April 1st.
Yes, okay.
And will run until December 31st.
All right, okay.
But that 243 charges and 11 warnings as of October 17th, so from April 1st to October
Okay.
17th. And that is just the Norfolk County officers'
Yeah.
initiative portion to that focus patrol. The Highway Safety Division will also have, I'm sure, probably numbers just as high. Perhaps the inspector could comment on that.
I'll turn mine off, Lacey.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I didn't know why it wasn't turning on there. Yeah, so what we did, with the grace of being the traffic manager, I can kind of give you a little bit more insight into that. What we did regionally is looked at where our fatalities and serious motor vehicle collisions were happening within West Region. And we identified the high volume detachment areas, and we've directed our Highway Safety Division resources, which are our traffic members in the region, 100% dedicated traffic, to certain directed patrols within detachment areas. This area was one of them, so it shows up as a high within West Region. So as Joe is saying, the numbers that he's reporting on are just the Norfolk numbers. So our idea was to try to combine the detachment resources and regional resources to hit the same areas to have a greater impact, in an effort, obviously, to try to save lives and reduce serious injuries from collisions. So the numbers that Joe's talking about will just be the Norfolk numbers. We report back from our Highway Safety Division on a quarterly basis as to what their results are. So the numbers will only go up in relation to the charges and the hours spent in that directed patrol.
In other words, there would have been even more charges laid during that same time period because of the regional officers also on that road.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mr. Chairman, I find that very interesting. I'm not sure why. We know Highway 24 continues to be a very busy highway. You'd think that would slow people down, not make them speed more, but perhaps it does both. And I don't know that there's any real answer to that, I guess. It's well marked. I mean, I think people that drive it regularly know that it's well patrolled by the OPP. But I guess maybe it's a commuter road between Simcoe and people that work in the north or whatever, who knows, as to why they are insisting. And I will admit, I have been stopped as well. And I guess it's an easy road to speed on, unfortunately. There's long open stretches. Because it's so busy, cars are having to pass other more slow-moving vehicles and inevitably get you up. So I guess I'm just thinking out loud, Mr. Chairman. There's nothing particularly profound about what I'm saying, but I wonder if there are solutions, short of making it a 3-lane highway, which I know the county wanted the province to do the last time it was rebuilt, if there are any true solutions to slowing vehicles down.
What we look at regionally, I haven't looked at, I just arrived in Norfolk here on Monday, but I am quite interested in looking at causalities, right? We do have with the OPP a lot of different mapping techniques and things that we're trying to use to specifically, our traffic enforcement should be directed towards saving lives and serious injuries, right? We have a limited number of resources to be able to put towards a very serious issue. So we should be putting them in the areas where we know we're going to have the biggest impact and save those major collisions from happening. So we do look at a lot with the directed patrols that we did throughout West Region. We're not just, just identifying areas. We're trying to look at causalities and do comparisons between collision statistics and individual detachments versus what the provincial trends are within the OPP as well as across the province as a whole. So if we do see that spike, say in alcohol-related collisions are 1% of a provincial total, if we see detachments that have 5 to 10 to 15% of them being alcohol involved, then our traffic efforts are going towards that alcohol reduction in collisions, ride programs, things like that. So we're just getting into that ability of mapping and doing things. So within my 3 months here, I would really like to look into a bit more on the traffic side with Norfolk as well. And perhaps in the next meeting, we can come back and look at a bit of causality for what we see on Highway 24. I know I haven't driven Highway 24 for very long. I think I've been on there maybe 7 times coming south into Simcoe. But even this morning, what I noticed is you have people that are obeying the speed limit and other people that become impatient and pass 5, 6, 7 cars at a time, and then they're up to such a high speed and then trying to get back into the lane. And that's just from my experience of what the statistics and what the data says in relation to that with our collisions. I'm not sure, but we can certainly look into that and see what we see with that causality factor.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That would be of considerable interest to us, I think, Lisa. And just your last comment about what you've observed, that's exactly what I have observed as a driver as well, that the volume is such that very, very quickly, if a vehicle going at 80 or 85 kilometers, which is the legal limit, obviously, it appears slow to the rest of the vehicles, but it doesn't take long before you've got 3 or 4 vehicles backed right up behind that one. And then it becomes 10 vehicles, and then people do get desperate and start going out. So short of, again, having those third lane sections, just like we do in some provincial highways where, you know, you've got a kilometer or two that is a passing lane, a third lane. I don't know if we'll ever get the province to consider doing that on that road, but it would be very helpful to have that kind of causality data analysis to back us up if we do go forward with something at some point. So that would be of interest.
Yeah, we can continue to talk on it, because if you do put in that third lane, then you deal with, normally when you have that third lane, then where you may have unsafe passing reductions, then you get speed too fast, because then people take advantage of the 2 lanes and the speed increases on that roadway. So there's always pluses and minuses to doing any improvements, but it really depends on what that root causality is of what we're having the issue on the highway.
Other questions on this? Charlie?
Comment, and certainly agree, Jim, with your observations. There are a lot of concessions that are offset along that highway between Townsend and Wyndham. I don't know of any stretch of road, Mr. Chair, in this county that I observe more people passing across the solid white line onto the shoulder to get around a left-hand turn than 24. I try to avoid 24 north at all cost. And I think as mentioned also, well, the pavement is smooth, with the exception of the overpass. It's fairly flat right through to the Brantford Airport, right into Simcoe, and I think people just get caught up in those long, flat stretches, and as you say, Jim, you're doing 80, 85 clicks, and they're passing you like you're holding things up. So, and then in the winter, when the wind gets blowing and from the west, the visibility sometimes is not great. But I think it's probably the worst stretch of road to travel, in my opinion. You got to stay awake on that highway. So.
Yeah, that stretch also, when we looked at the regional issues, it also stretches up into Brant County as well. It's that, because we have that directed patrol that continues right into Brant County. It's along that, it's not just that Norfolk stretch, it's right up north into Brant.
I think we'll probably show it as Business Arising next month. So if you're going to drill down on what's happening on Highway 24, I mean, that's something that we would obviously very appreciative of knowing whether there's anything that we can do. I mean, certainly Joe mentioned that a lot of the non-fatal accidents were distracted, but I mean, speeding is something that it's all enforcement really. So public information, public education. So I think if you could follow it up, that would be great. We would really like to know.
Yep, we'll get something together for the next meeting, and I'll present it for you. We do have a lot of, because of my previous position, some data there as to why we put that directed patrol together, so I can bring that and some new information.
Good. Any other questions on the inspector's report? Any other questions for the inspector on any other subject? Seeing none, if we could have a motion to adopt the report. Moved by Jim, second by Charlie. All in favor? The only other business that we have is the OAPSB meeting January 9th. Typically, Dave Murphy goes, but is unavailable, so if there is anyone available for it. It's on January 9th. Any other business? Seeing none, if we could move on to question period.
Good morning, everyone,
Morning.
and welcome, Inspector. I'm Monty Sonnenberg with Simcoe Reformer, and I was wondering if I could have a couple minutes of your time between the end of this meeting and the closed session, just to speak with you and get a photo, please.
Yeah, absolutely, certainly.
Oh, great. Okay, good. And I have a question for Staff Sergeant Varga. You mentioned that we had a brief conversation here about carfentanil. It's very toxic, a very small amount can even kill a person inadvertently. And I'm just wondering, how are our frontline officers being protected when they're executing search warrants with regard to, drug interdiction, that sort of thing, to prevent them from coming in contact with these substances and being injured?
All frontline officers, all officers have been trained to use their personal protective equipment, such as double glove, safety glasses, N95 mask, and to take all precautions when handling any substance that they're not sure what it is, and even when they are sure what it is.
Okay. What's the nature of these masks that you're talking about?
They're the standard N95 masks that filter out most.
It's a breathing mask. It's
a
like a
breathing
filter.
mask.
Okay.
Much the same as you see with drywallers wear.
Okay.
And then, of course, we do have a dedicated special unit in Aurelia that looks after any large labs that are located.
Okay. When we talk about the big four in Norfolk County, with regard to speeding, are we talking about, drinking and driving, seat belts, distracted driving, and so on, or are we talking about 4 stretches of road?
I'll let Inspector Anderson answer that, as she's the
Okay,
former
great.
traffic marine.
The big four that we talk about with the OPP are the seatbelts, alcohol, distracted
Okay.
driving, and speeding. I don't know, not being familiar with Norfolk, but are you talking about the same thing in there, Joe? Okay, yeah, so that's
Okay.
those are the big four, and those are provincially, and between all the other police services, pretty much in Ontario, are the same thing.
Alrighty. Staff Sergeant Varga, we know that that stretch of road from the Brant-Norfolk County line south into Simcoe on Highway 24, a lot of bad crashes there, and people drive like maniacs. What are the other 2 worst stretches of road in Norfolk County behind those?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't answer that, Monty. I'd have to go do some analysis
Okay.
and get those 2. I would just be guessing,
Okay, good.
and I won't guess.
Alrighty.
And I know in the directed patrols, the only other section I think we had in Norfolk was that Highway 3 section?
The other police patrol,
Right. Yeah, well, that would make sense. Okay, thank you very much. And again, welcome. And when the chair sees fit to adjourn this meeting, it's like a couple minutes of your time, if you don't mind, and speak to you. Thanks. Oh, I did have a question for the chair. Has the Norfolk OPP ever had a female inspector in charge? Is this kind of a first for Norfolk County, having some female leadership?
This would be the first. I'm not sure we're supposed to notice that sort of thing, but
It's usually a milestone.
okay, well,
Okay,
that
thanks.
would be the answer to the question.
Okay.
What you write is what you write.
Okay.